regrets. There's no time for it. You know what I mean? Like everything in life is just a lesson. And if people take it and put it into their like skill stack, it genuinely makes you such an incredible person and such an incredible asset to any business.
Welcome to WITT. Hi, I'm Megan. I talk with founders, investors and operators working in tech. My aim is to inspire you with their stories and perspectives. Through this podcast, I want to amplify the voice of women working in tech. If you want to support WITT, then make sure you follow us on your favourite podcasting app. Then you won't miss any future episodes. Today's episode is with Ash, the founder of Parenthood, an AI for parenting startups. Prior to becoming a founder, Ash held a number of operator-heavy roles in tech companies. Let's get started. Hi Ashley, welcome to WITT. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lovely. I would love to kick off our conversation with the lightning round. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Awesome. First question. This is the most important question. Okay. What is your favourite flavour of ice cream?
Chocolate chip.
Chocolate chip.
Vanilla chocolate chip. Vanilla chocolate chip.
Okay.
Yeah.
Controversial. Nice.
I know. Simple.
Second question. What's one word to describe your personal brand?
Chaotic.
Nice. Love it. Okay, third one. Very important one as well. Tim Tams or Kit Kat?
Tim Tams all the way.
Oh, yeah.
They've just started selling them in the UK as well.
Oh, yay, nice. Fourth question. What's the most valuable lesson you've learnt from failure?
It doesn't make you a weak person.
I like that.
Yeah.
Fifth question. Who is your favourite music artist?
Oh, I'm obsessed with music.
Yeah.
I would probably say Cleo Sol.
Okay. Sixth question. What's your favourite time of the day?
Oh, hands down. I love getting into my jammies at the end of the day. Like, there's nothing better than having a shower and getting into your pajamas. So whatever time that is, that's my favourite time of the day.
Nice. Honestly, same.
Oh, it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah. Seventh question. And this is you can get it wrong, so answer carefully.
Pressure.
Dog person or cat person?
Dog person all the way.
Yes.
I'm actually allergic to cats.
Let's go.
And I also think they're a little bit evil. Like, they're kind of like the youngest child of the family. Do you know what I mean? Like, if they know they're annoying you, they're going to continue to annoy you. Whereas dogs are just happy. They're just happy people.
Exactly. I totally agree. Okay, eighth question. How have you turned ADHD into a superpower?
Embraced it. Embraced it is probably, like, keeping it lightning. I've embraced it.
Yeah, nice.
Doesn't make it easy, but I have.
I like that. That's good. Ninth question. Who is the most inspiring person you've ever worked with?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
The most inspiring person I've ever worked with. That's a really tough one, because to be brutally honest, it takes a lot for me to be inspired by someone. But I would say the type of people, I wouldn't be able to say one name off the top of my head, but the type of people that inspire me are the people who can love people and do business.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, and then last question for the lightning round is, if you had to describe your journey in 3 emojis, what would they be and why?
Oh.
I like this one.
Probably a beer.
A beer.
Because after a couple of drinks, you're 2 steps here, 2 steps there, 2 steps here, 2 steps there. And then a happy face, because I'm genuinely really happy with it all. And then, you know, like the scrunchy face where you're a bit like, eek.
Yeah.
Because I never really know what I'm doing. I just make it up as I go along.
I like it. It's a good motto to live by. Okay, well, that was really cool. Thank you so much for answering my lightning round questions. And let's move on to your journey, right? So you grew up in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you think your career has changed? Like, what are some interesting things you've done?
I mean, now there's a word for it, which is called a generalist. When I
Mm,
was coming up for it, like when I was coming up in specifically my generation, it was kind of my career. If someone were to look back now, would be like, well, it's all over the shop.
yeah.
But I feel like it's always been really purposeful. Like from the minute I was younger, I wanted to be a social worker. And I did that. And then as I kind of grew up and like loved entrepreneurship or just like found that I had a knack for like finding answers or figuring out a problem or like seeing A to B, you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? I'm quite a dreamer, which isn't always good, but I feel like it's led me to do a million different things. I've been a social worker, I've worked in the music industry, I've worked in tech, and I'm still working in tech now. But I would say the common thread of it is like everything I've done has been human-centric, whether I've been working as a social worker, whether I've been working in business, that
Mm-hmm.
has been the main thread. And I used to really struggle with that. I used to be like, well, you know, I need to have a career for this long. I always felt a little bit weird that it would be like a few years here and a few years there. Now
Yeah.
there's a name for it. It's called a skill stack. So I feel like where careers and everything now is a breath of fresh air. But
Mm-hmm.
mine has definitely been unplanned, but also all really meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
You
Definitely.
know, I've
Yeah.
loved everything I've done. I don't think I've ever looked back at a job and thought, I wish I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's my mindset of thinking that you can only get one thing from a specific career
Mm-hmm.
or looking at how all of it comes together. But I've never looked back and thought, gosh, I wish I didn't do that.
Yeah.
There's been people I've looked back and gone,
Yeah,
gosh,
yeah,
I
of
wish I
course,
didn't
of
have to
course.
work with them.
That's just life.
Yeah. But
No,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's like no regrets kind of thing.
Right. There's no time for it. You know what I mean? Like everything in life is just a lesson.
Mm,
And if people take it into and put it into their like skill stack, it
yeah,
genuinely makes you such an incredible person and such an
yeah,
incredible asset to any business.
yeah. A unique perspective.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is a bit connected, and it's like when you look back on just generally your life, who would you say are the most pivotal people in your life, and how did they shape you, or how did you shape yourself? Which is how I
Yeah.
like to put it.
Um, I've got a bit of a random mix. I feel like I've always definitely shaped myself,
Mm-hmm.
but my mum was a very pivotal part in this. My mum was a single mum,
Mm-hmm.
but she's always been like, you can do it. Like, what's the worst that can happen if you do it? Right. And my mum has always been like in a league of her own as a woman. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's been a stay at home mum, she's had a career,
Right.
but she's all like, I've never questioned myself going into boardrooms or into meetings that what I have to say isn't valuable. And it's not that she was kind of like, just say whatever you want, because I've refined that as I've gotten older, right? I used to just say what
Mm-hmm.
was on my mind when I was
Yeah.
younger, and it can come across as rude. Whereas now I'm a lot more refined and political about it.
Oh, that's good.
Um, yeah.
So I
but
don't do that, but
yeah,
yeah, that's good for you.
but she's always like, you are not a man. You don't need to be a man, but doesn't mean what you have to say is any different. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean what
Mm,
you bring is any less. So she was a massive part. I had the rest of them have actually been men.
mm,
The next one was a guy who I had worked with at a charity, and we were building a tech, and he just was like wholeheartedly behind me. He was like, you can do this. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
yes, your thinking is amazing. Keep thinking like that. And then honestly, the third person I would probably say is your dad, because I feel like when I met your dad, Colin, for those who don't know him,
Yeah.
I was at a point where I was like a really good like businesswoman, right?
Right.
And like I could do business well, I could lead people well, but there was a next part of me that was like, well, actually, like I have the ability to be like C-suite level here. And your dad was very much like, yes, you've got this. Do you know what I mean? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
taught me about those things. It was like, why wouldn't you apply for those jobs? Why wouldn't you do that? So
Yeah.
it's been really interesting that I've actually had really incredibly supportive men in my life. And I don't know whether that's been because they have been the specific people in my life that are automatically respected, or I looked at and thought, actually, I would love to have a little bit of what you've got, so I'm going to listen to what you have to say. You know, I don't know what the context of that is, but I would say each of those people, my mum, this other gentleman, your dad, just came around at the right time in my life.
Yeah.
For me to push me and propel me forward. I've worked with lots and lots of great people who have trusted me wholeheartedly, but sometimes you just come across people who just give you that extra push and go, actually, you're not crazy. You can actually do that. Like, what you're saying is valuable. So yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes you need that kind of person to push you in life.
Yeah, 100%. And those three people have also been really grounding people, because I can be like very entrepreneurial to the point of like, you know, when you're like, think you can get something done in 2 weeks, it's just not possible. You know what I mean? Like, those people have also been really grounding and have told me in my life what I need to adjust or what I actually need to change to be the better person for what I want to do. And I respect people like that, because I think you love me enough to tell me the truth. Like, when I'm being an asshole or when I'm being great, like, to me, that's the epitome of respect, is when you love someone enough to be like, you have to change this if you want to get here.
Yeah.
And I know not everyone appreciates that type of feedback, but I personally do.
It's
And
very
they've all
important.
been
It's
like
like
that.
the most important type of feedback, in my opinion, anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I wanted to ask this question because I thought of it while I was coming up with this. But how much credit do you give yourself for your life success? So we talked about all of these other people that have shaped you. What do you think for you, for yourself?
Do you know what? I've been on a journey with this one, because I've always had like quite a lot of confidence in myself. Like, I've always been that type of person who was like, why can't I do that? Like, why wouldn't that happen to me? I firmly believe like what you set and expect is what you get, right? And I know it's not always smooth sailing. I don't think I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to have a Ferrari. A Ferrari's just going to rock up. But like in leadership roles and everything like that, I've always been like quite key parts of teams, but I've never wanted to be like the seen person, if that makes sense. And I've thought about this a lot, because it's not about the accolade. It's because I genuinely love people. And so I want people to be able to do a better job than what I've done. Right. So as I've gotten older, I give myself a lot more credit about, actually, those weren't just like really willy-nilly character traits. Like, they've actually gotten me somewhere. And like, why wouldn't I be able to do this? And I've felt more confident as I've seen like me be me, bring out the best in other people that I've worked with or see them raise up. So I do give myself a lot of credit, because sometimes I've bloody jumped off a cliff not knowing what the hell I'm doing on YouTube, being like, how do I do company finance? You know what I mean? Like, obviously now with AI, it's a hell of a lot easier. But I do give myself credit, because I do think it takes courage to just get up and do things, or like do things that you don't have a clue about what you're doing.
Especially as in the kind of entrepreneurial space, it's like you're literally putting all your eggs in one basket, and that basket is you. So it's like, it's difficult. I like it.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's talk about management and leadership. You mentioned it a little bit. Like, what is the difference to you? Explain it to us.
So I feel like management is taking somebody's job description and making sure they do that job description, right? I feel like in business, we're working with adults, right? Adults who own homes, have families, are parents, are starting businesses. And then all of a sudden we take them into these work scenarios and they've got a job description. We make sure they do that job description. Then when they don't do it, we're like, why haven't you done it? Whereas I feel like management doesn't teach initiative. It doesn't teach people to follow their gut. May not necessarily be the right term there. But I feel like in our everyday life, we manage to lead ourselves with intuition, and we know what feels right. We know what doesn't feel right. Those people still know that in a work scenario, but management doesn't allow for that. Management doesn't allow people to think, actually, we could do this better, or why don't we try it like this? Whereas when you train leaders and you are a leader, you're thinking human-centric. You're looking at people going, how do I get the best of you? Instead of going, can you do it like this and bring it back to me by this? get people, this is what we want the outcome to be, go away and figure out how to do it. To me, that's leadership. Management is, it needs to be done here, it needs to be done like this, can you include this, can you include this, can you include this, blah, blah, no one cares.
Like control managing, right?
Yeah, 100%. And then people and managers wonder why, like, people don't want to listen to them. Do you know what I mean? Because they're not working on intuition. The amount of times I've had people come to me and be like, they're just not doing anything. And I'm like, well, have you asked them how they are? Well, no. Well, because you're managing them, you're not leading them. And I'm not saying like leaders have to be like, sit down, have a cup of tea, let's talk about your life, tell me your issues, I'll take that on, all of those types of things. But sometimes you have to lead with intuition, like you genuinely do. And when you lead people, they then do that, which replicates growth and growers and thinkers and expanders. Whereas people who are managed just do stuff. They do their reports, they do their work, they leave at the end of the day, you know, whereas leaders will come to you and go, there's an issue. Like, this is what's happening. We need to do this. To me, that's what the difference is.
Yeah, it's because you can't lead as a robot. You have to lead with human connection.
Yeah, right? 100%. And you hire people because they're better at you. Like, you hire people because they're the expertise or they're the generalist in the job. So why is it when they come into a workplace, we start treating them like they're 2-year-olds and have no clue? Like, even with things like supervision, right? I get the notion of it. And I do believe there should be check-ins and to check how people are. But like, do you message your mate? Do you put in your diary, message this person to check how they are? You don't, because you just might be doing something and think, I haven't spoken to so-and-so for a while. I know they're having a hard time. I'm going to check in with them. But I don't understand when we get into this corporate context, that just so disappears.
Weird. It's so interesting. It's so weird. Let's change subjects a little bit, but not a lot. As you've said before, you've worked in a lot of different companies, right? And so one of the first books I read on company culture was No Rules Netflix by Reed Hastings and Erin Mears. How does culture form and how do companies use culture to go from good to great, in your opinion? It's a hard question.
It is a hard question, but I think company culture is like the undercurrent of everything, right?
Yes.
Like 100%. And a lot of people don't see that. They think, I need a company culture within the company. And then we have a culture of how people see us as a company. That's not possible, right? Those two bleed together 100%.
Well,
and I feel like, you know, there's this term that someone once told me that what bleeds at the top will flow to the bottom. And it's the same notion of what happens at home happens everywhere else, right? And it's the same thing. People don't take that into a work context. If we treated work like we did at home, we would be thinking about the underlying culture of the company. Are people happy? Happy people do good work. Good work creates great product, all of these types of things. Whereas I think people see it as a tick list. Here's a company culture. And if you took 100 companies and said, give me a piece of paper with your company culture, I can guarantee you what's on it. Equality. Like all of these different types of things, which are important, but no one talks about like it as DNA. You know, no one talks about it as company specific. Every company needs a completely different culture. And so I think if the company culture isn't right and isn't personalized to that company, what they're designing, the team that they're working with, if I work with a C-suite team who are maybe more managers than leaders, the company culture is different, right? Like you would initiate something different instead of the standard, here's my 6 dot points, I'm going to put it on a website and this is what we are. But when people start doing that and treating it like their home, they get serious about it. They learn to respect each other. And I feel like it kind of ties in a lot with leadership. It all has to be human-centric. It completely does. You can't do it as a tick box exercise. But if the company culture isn't right, or there's a company culture set that is not formulated by nuance of the company, everybody else is held to that standard and C-suites aren't. It's the reality. So it needs to be something that is replicatable within that specific environment. In my point of view. I could be wrong. And I'm happy to be wrong.
It totally makes a lot of sense. It's very interesting, the kind of structure that corporates or just generally companies in general kind of set up in the kind of professional work environment.
Yeah.
I've obviously never kind of really had a job, so I don't really have too much experience in this, but I can definitely see it in my dad's, experiences. But yeah, no, it definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So my next question is, to succeed in business, you have to get vision, capital, and people, right? So how do you keep businesses set on this vision, organization, and capital, onboarding, and then retain the right people?
Oh, I think they go hand in hand, right? I
Yeah.
think the capital comes when you're giving something that people want, but you only give something that people want if you've got the right people to do that specific job,
Yeah.
right? And I think it is maybe reverse, right? You keep people by having good leaders. People leave businesses because of people, full stop. You will get a portion of people who leave businesses because they're unhappy or they're generalists. Do you know what I mean? Like me, who can only give something for a certain amount of time. But that also comes in with, it's kind of like chicken and egg, right? You need the money to do the work, but you need the people, but you need the money to get the people. You know what I mean? It's like this whole chicken and egg thing.
Yeah.
But I think retaining the right people, you have to hire the right people. And a lot of people hire on what the need of the company is, right? So they'll go, here is a gap. Let's write a job description. Let's hire people to fill this specific job description instead of looking at what they need, right? If I'm hiring someone, of course you look at the job description. I'm not saying we don't look at the job description,
of course.
but I would go, do I need a leader in here? Do I need a grower? Like, do I need someone who's going to take this and run with it? Is this in a really good state already? Like, especially when you're working with entrepreneurship, a lot of the time you have to hire growers, you have to hire drivers because it is all in, right? But there are times when things are established, things are working well, things are generating good amounts of revenue. Other people are interested in what the business is. So you don't hire a grower, you don't hire people like me, you hire a maintainer who are your more atypical, analytical, who can keep things going. Because if you then hire a grower like me, we come in and we go, well, why don't we do this? Well, why don't we do this? Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? And that's not always the time and place for it. So to me, it's kind of a little bit like a chicken and an egg. Like, I'm working on something at the moment and it's me and a business partner, and we've needed people to do the work to obviously then show the investors and all of these types of things. But I have had to think about, who do we need to do this work to be able to show that, to raise that, to be able to do more.
Like, what type of person do you need?
Yeah, what type of person? Because a lot of the time, people in some businesses don't look at that. There's maintainers, there's growers, and then sometimes there's rebuilders, right? If a company is not necessarily doing well and you bring in a rebuilder, and a lot of the time, some people who are quite entrepreneurial can cross over the line between a grower and a rebuilder because they are quite similar roles. But if you put a rebuilder into rebuild something, create culture, make it happy, get it working, redesign it, all of that kind of stuff, if you keep them there too long, they're just going to keep reinventing something that maybe doesn't need to be reinvented. So when I hire, I look at, what do I actually need, and then can they do the actual job? You know what I mean? Don't just hire people who can.
It makes it. It's very simple, but it makes sense.
But a lot of people don't think about it like that.
Yeah, true. You already talked about this, but it's like the whole framework aspect, digging into your frameworks, and you have mentioned this. But what do you say is a go-to mechanism for hiring the right person? So you're looking at what you need, like, what is the right person for you, and how do you kind of decide on that?
Yeah. I would personally look at the trajectory of what the role is. And I would probably hire on that. I wouldn't hire about what the need is right now, because those needs change really, really quickly. And as obviously we've just talked about, I do think about those aspects, because even though I have talked about leaders and managers, a lot of managers are also maintainers. So there is a time and a place for them, right? So I would look at the trajectory of what is needed in this role. And sometimes, especially as a startup, you're not going to be able to afford 100,000 for the tip top person, right? So I would hire someone who would maybe potentially ask the right questions, or I could see actually had the ability to grow into those roles, because sometimes those people are worth their weight in gold. Like if they're changeable, vulnerable, like adjustable, and like give feedback, then I'm like, you're the right person for the job. And it's not about molding people to the right job. It's people can grow in that job. And I'm really passionate about people being able to grow in roles and not just hiring somebody because they can do the job really well, because those people eventually move on. Whereas if you get someone who can grow into that role and make it their own, or make a department their own, it's really, they're just like incredible people to have around. And a lot of the time, those people, I mean, I don't know if you've read the book The Range, you probably have. Your dad actually recommended it to me. And a lot of the time when I look at hiring, I actually look at hiring generalists more after reading that, because there's a time and a place for people with really specific skills. But sometimes you just need people who can be like, oh, I can see what they're doing in marketing, and this is what I'm doing here, but this is how they connect. They're able to see the bigger picture. So I do think about all of those things.
It's very simple, but it is like people are so important in these sorts of situations, and it's getting the right person
100%.
in the right place on the bus is just the most important part.
And it's actually really hard to do, right? Because you have to, it takes a lot of trust. And sometimes in the first round, if you don't get those people, sometimes I do understand the context of work pressure and needing to take pressure off the people who are already in the roles or who that new role may affect. So I completely understand those other contexts. And it is hard. It's not always easy. And it's not always easy to let people get on with it. So yeah, I understand it's difficult. I can understand why people go, this is a job description, let's do that. It's easy to monitor. You know what I mean? Like,
totally. Yeah. Okay, well, now we entered the part of the podcast which I like to call the zigzag zone. Yeah.
Sounds like my career.
Yeah. So I want to know where you're zagging and everyone else is zigging. So you famously don't have a life plan.
I do not have a life plan at all.
And I always have at least 20 plans going simultaneously. So what are the benefits of not having a plan?
I think some people need a plan, right? I think some people survive off a plan, and they would not enjoy their life or feel content if they didn't have a plan. So I completely get that.
Yeah.
For me personally, I found not having a plan helps me stick to who I am, right? I had a conversation when I was really young with my best friend. We've been friends for about 23 years. And we used to talk a lot about, there's a difference between who you are and what you do, right? I know I'm called to lead people, love people, and like think outside the box. But I could do that at McDonald's.
Right.
I could do the same thing at McDonald's. So I feel like for me personally, not having a plan has kept me aligned to who it is that I want to be, right? Because it's really easy when you're being offered money and all of this to end up in places you never wanted to be in. And like of recent, I've been offered great jobs, like ones that would hit the newspaper that people would really, really want. But there was just something in me that was like, I can't do me in that scenario. So I can't do that job. So I feel like it's helped me with that, but it's also left me open to like finding what feels right and working with who feels right at the time. And that's really important to me personally. But I understand that is a skill that people learn along the way by only like trusting yourself, you know, which is hard to do. We've all got bills to pay.
Yes.
We've all got these scenarios like we do. So it is easier to have a plan and stick to that plan. But for me, I feel like, it's given me like a plumb line of being able to now turn around and go, actually, I've loved everything I've done. No matter what the context is, no matter whether it was social work, tech, music, in all of them, I've loved people. I've come up with great ideas, helped businesses grow or helped people grow, you know, and been able to lead. And that's just, I think, what's kept me happy at the core.
Yeah. I mean, we all know this. People are different, you know, they have different
100%
opinions and different ways of shaping their life. But yeah, no, really interesting to hear your perspective. Now it's story time. So I want to know what happened with your kind of career in the music industry, how did that happen? What was that like?
I think it was just really interesting, right? Because I did it simultaneously with other things, and it was I wouldn't say it's a weird context at all, because it kind of took me back to like my social work and passionate about, like, there's a massive gap in the music industry when it comes to mental health. 100%. We see it every single day on the news. We see it all the time, and the music industry is taking steps to do that. But I had put on a mental health tour with a couple of friends. So we traveled the UK, bringing in artists for the end goal of getting the largest mental health session on the Guinness World Book of Records, which had already been done by one of the guys before. And so that's how it kind of started. And then I was at a session, like one of the sessions one time at the Empire, and met a couple of people in the music industry, and he said, "You should meet my wife. Like, she's really passionate about mental health." And so I started chatting to her, and we were like, we have to do something more here. So then we started just talking about like mentoring people in a really like intuitive way. That wasn't necessarily like, this is what you do with finance, this is what you do with this. There's a really different nuance with creative people, right? They lead from a different place, they think from a different place, and they're depleted as a person from a different place. Like, you will see that when you have your creative teams in companies, they're always working late. They sometimes start late, but that's okay because they think differently. But when they're creating, they're depleted. Whereas sometimes when we're in like the corporate world, we're depleted from a long day, right? We're depleted from thinking. But musicians are depleted because they're writing about themselves, their experience, and the whole world is coming down. Don't like it. Don't want this. They're up at early hours, and so there's this whole context. So
it's a lot more kind of personal, you could say. Like,
it's a lot more personal, and it's a really, really big issue to tackle. Mental health is a big issue in general, but mental health with creative people is a lot harder to get a handle on, just because they think really differently, they respond to things really differently, and what makes them happy is slightly different to sometimes atypical people. And I'm not saying that atypical people can't be creative, because there are people that can actually completely do both, which is a complete battle in itself. It's like dealing with the left side and the right side of the brain constantly. It's very tiring. But yeah, it was good, and it's enjoyable, and it was like sad to see really, really great people so affected by what was going on around them, when all they wanted to do was give, and their gift and who they are obviously get turned into commodities, which is a really hard thing to watch. So it's something that is still happening. Like, there's a lot of work being done, but is it there yet? No, it's not necessarily there yet, but that's how I landed in it, basically.
Okay. Well, that was really interesting. Learned a lot of new things, so I'm very glad. But sadly, we're coming to the end of the podcast, but I do have 3 final questions for you, which are: imagine it's 2035. What does your life look like? Where are we? What does your career look like? What's happening?
Oh gosh. Just, to be honest, I'd love to be enjoying my life. I'd love to be working with people who are starting up businesses, and just be that person that is like, you can do this, like, you've got this, how can I help you? Obviously, like, you've got to be like multimillionaire to be able to do that at that point. But that's where I hope I would be, and still like leaning into technology and leaning into like forward thinking and what's to come. Not having my children being like, oh, gosh, mum, you don't even know how to use AI. Like, I just never want to be that person. So I hope that at that point I am there and still as happy with my career as what I am now. I don't think I'll ever not be able to work, because I'm just enjoy being busy, to be brutally honest. And enjoy being involved with things. But I hope that it moves to a position where I'm less leading it and more just being involved and helping how I can.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, and second question: how can listeners follow along with your journey?
I'm terrible at this, because I'm terrible on social media. They can follow me on LinkedIn, but I'm pretty sure I haven't even updated my LinkedIn in a while. I've never applied for a job, so I haven't really ever had the need for LinkedIn. I probably should talk a lot more on LinkedIn, because when I have conversations, people are like, oh, you should write about this more often. Yeah. So people can follow me on LinkedIn, Ashley Carlile.
And last question, how can listeners be useful to you? So what can they do to help you?
Well, interesting you say that. I'm in the business of, I'm currently working on something new, which is AI parenting.
Lovely.
Yeah. So if there's any investors listening, hit me up. Because we're at that point now of getting the big bucks to do the big work, really. And it's a brilliant idea. It's replicatable. It's possible. It's patentable. So that's what people can do. Contact me with your money.
Lovely. Yes, we love it. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I'm really looking forward to following along with your journey. But yeah, thank you.
Of course, anytime.
Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this week's show. To make sure you don't miss next week's episode, follow us on your favourite podcasting app. Do consider leaving a review as it helps the podcast tremendously.